Today's episode is brought to you by Hustler Made to Work. I'm really honored that they've come on to support the podcast because I've actually been using Hustlers for almost 10 years now myself. They're some of the most reliable machines that I've ever used in my business. More about them later in the podcast. All right, welcome to today's episode of the Australian Lawn and Garden Podcast. We've got Attila the Hun. His long-lost cousin, Attila the Horticulturalist, who's not going to reap as much terror as that last name that we suggested, but maybe you will, atone for the sins of your namesake. How are you going, Attila?
Good. Well, I reap terror in gardens, so and hopefully I do I do a really good job in what I do, and I have a very niche clientele, or that's where I've sort of positioned myself in an area of gardening that there isn't a lot of people that do what I do.
You've been doing it for a while, though. We went in Canberra, and the Canberra podcast, for those who are unaware, was ruined by speakers in the roof and all that sort of stuff, and we couldn't release it. But you sound like you had a lot of experience, a lot of funny, weird, strange stories from your time in the industry, and as well just working in Canberra. So I thought we'll get you on the podcast and just have a chat about relatable stories that all of us contractors go through.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been doing it 31 years in various fields. So I've been wholesale nurseries, retail nurseries, wholesale nursery again, large. So I worked in defence properties in Canberra. I volunteered, used to work out in historic homesteads in Western Sydney. So I originally come from Sydney and did all my hort in Sydney. Then moved to Canberra because I wanted some land. So and then just had to learn a whole new suite of plants, which was really good. A completely different climate to what I was used to in Sydney. But 25 years later, I really, really enjoy being here.
So before we get into silly questions, here's the thing about this podcast, right? And I've said this a billion times, but Australian advice is just, there's no such thing as an Australian-wide advice, right? Other than the fundamentals of like, make sure your plant gets enough light. Climate is so different across the country. You put a picture up. It is September the 19th today, right? And this will probably come out in a week or something like that. But you put a picture up like 5 days ago and it was -6. Is that right? Like something like that in September.
So Monday morning was -6.9. So to put this into context, I thought, for shits and giggles, I'm going to go on to BOM and see what the coldest ever temperature. So this is ever temperature that they have reliably recorded in WA. Do you know what town it is? So
it'd be somewhere central. Let me have a guess. It'll be
South Central. I'll give you a clue.
It would be something like that. I'm gonna say Nannup.
So no, it was Ayr, and it was -7.2. So that's the coldest. So that's the coldest ever temperature recorded. So for us, frost is clearly a limiting factor. Spring frost or September frost and October is definitely not unheard of. The worst thing is that when you get the warmth, they actually do more damage than anything in June, July, or August can do, because the plants are basically, they've shut down. There's no sap flow. Once you get sap flow, that's it. That's where the frost. So, so yesterday I was in a customer's place. They have a 26-metre long wisteria arbor, which I put on Instagram last night. All the flowers gone, and I'm talking tens of thousands of flower buds, all gone. Like everything's just fried. So, local grape producer, wine growers, obviously their first, the bit of flowering, probably a little bit of damage. So, but see, for us, it doesn't even compute. Like if we don't get negative temperatures, it's sort of really odd. Like, give you an eye, my dog is so good. Like she knows how to clear the ice off her dog bowl. So she'll put her foot in, she'll grab the ice off and then put her head in and take the ice off the ice bowl, off her water bowl. So she knows how to get her water. That's how regular it is. So it's just, anytime from March till early November. I'm
going to Google Perth coldest temp. I remember we've gone below zero Okay. The lowest temperature ever recorded in Perth is minus 0.7. We haven't even gotten to -1. But I know that we've gotten below zero, and that was 2006. I know there's been times that we've been like just below zero, but it's newsworthy. Like you get like minus 0.02 or something, and it's like, yeah, that's newsworthy. So, mate, we don't even know what that means. But then again, you probably you get this thing called rain. We don't get so much of that. You know, but this is what I'm getting at. The advice. I'm actually working on some more articles at the moment, and I'm the more I've done this podcast, the more I'm like, man, I can't do these articles on my own anymore because I write them from my experience, and I need Eastern Staters to chip in, and it just gets to a point where like you don't know, you can know everything about your climate, everything, and be the bee's knees, the duck's nuts gardener in Darwin, and then you move to Canberra, and you are starting almost from ground zero. Other than the fundamentals, you have to learn the new plants and everything. And anyway, that was really highlighted to me on the trip, and it's part of our conversation that I actually remember quite a bit talking to you and the other Canberra people.
Oh, yeah, it's quite... I had a Melbourne garden designer come up when I worked for a large landscape firm, which we did garden maintenance, body design. By the time I'd finished redacting it with the black pen, she had probably a quarter of the plants she wanted to use, because they would not grow. Like, you know, like things like you would use, like what's the Agonis flexuosa? Like, you know,
got some out in the drive. Got in the car park right there.
Yeah, a good small evergreen tree. No, forget it. Won't grow here. Like, it's just not a chance in the world. Like, aloes, we can't grow aloes here. A lot of agaves we can't grow. So a lot of the desert plants we can't actually grow here when we have dry times. But a lot of the cold climate stuff need better soil and more rainfall, so we can't grow those either. So we're getting this sort of, like, it's a good climate for actually getting rid of plants that just won't cope with heat and with cold. Although that being said, like, our heat's nothing like Perth. I mean, put it in context, in my entire life, I've only ever experienced 2 days over 40. Like, that's
goodness.
it. Like, that's all I've ever, 2 days over 40. Last summer, I think the hottest we had was maybe 35. Like, and that was on one day. So heat is not a thing that, you know, when we think it's hot, and then I say, no, have a look at Perth. They haven't had rain for 7 months, and they've had day after day over 40. I said, our heat is nothing, and then it's not as dry either. So, you're completely right. It's completely different I don't have sand. I've got silty loam over heavy clay. So it's a completely different, like, you know, Sydney, we had sandstone country, which we basically called it dirty sand, you know, or along the beach. And it was just like, it was horrible. I just, you know, it was great for digging and planting, but no, give me a silty clay soil anytime. Like, much easier.
I was once I was cycling when I was a young whippersnapper, and I was working at a school. I wouldn't even be 20 yet, I don't believe. I was cycling back from work, and I had a thermometer on my bike, and it was a mid-40s day, and I finished at the school at 2:30. So it's about 2:30, 3 o'clock. So, you know, it's still really hot. And the thermometer on the bike, because of the radiating heat off the road, was reading 53. And I have a photo of that on my phone somewhere. Like, I pulled over on the side of the road, I took a photo, and I'll be honest, it was hot, but I wasn't like dying. Like, I'd worked out, I had settled out, and I was cycling home. You know, you're sweaty, cycling, the breeze is there, but you're used to the heat, you know, and you're like, man, I want to get home and have a cold shower. I'm not enjoying my life. But I've found other days where I've just been zonked and it's just hit me. I do feel like that build up to, it's the first really hot day as a gardener knocks you, and then 2 weeks later, that same temperature, it feels like it's not that much. That's what it's like in Perth anyway. So, anyways, but yeah, hottest temperature in Perth is 46.2.
Oh, that's... Oh, Jesus, yeah. No, see, we generally get cool nights, but no, you're right. Like the first, like anything over 20, like 21, 22 in September, like feels like it's warm. It's shorts and T-shirts weather. That sort of temperature in January, you're like putting a jumper back on. So, I mean, that's why like people go, how do you work in -6? And I said, well, I just put gloves on and away you go. Like, it's not, you've got a whole heap of different jobs. Like I say, don't walk on your lawn when it's frosty, because I said your footprints will be there until it regrows. Like, don't touch it, don't walk on it, don't do anything with it. Like, wait till 10 o'clock in the morning, the frost will be gone. But basically, we don't have to mow because of our cool season grasses here, which is really funny. We don't have to mow between May and September. They just, unless it's a sports field, they don't grow very much at all. Like, they just virtually go in mine, and some wallaby grass also, plus Canturf doing O'Connor's. They do strawberry clover, which is a really small leaf clover that sits in underneath the leaf blade. Because I absolutely love clover in the lawn and dichondra, and a lot of those little broadleaf ground cover plants, because that's sort of my I really like them in the lawn, because it tends to limit how much curl grub I get, because that's our biggest lawn. Yeah, so we don't get lawn army like I know in Sydney, I think it's lawn armyworm from memory. Used to be, I think it was lawn armyworm in Buffalo. Like, you'd get that, and it'd just be like overnight, you blink, and it's just like, shit, my lawn's gone. Like, so yeah, curl grubs is our biggest thing. But with clover in the lawn, it tends to mask where they can feed.
So,
and
they don't feed on the clover. They don't feed on the dichondra, just the grasses.
Just the grass roots, yes.
Right.
Yeah. So, so what they'll do is that sort of, I guess it's almost like masking. It's a bit like putting deodorant on and masking your scent. So by putting clover in, you're masking the scent of the fescue and the grass roots, because it's a different root, because one's a
right
dicot and the other's a monocot. So, they have different root structures. So, they tend to be further spaced out. They'll still feed, but they won't concentrate. I mean, sometimes, in February, where the magpies lift up, you might have a square metre and you'll have a couple hundred curl grub. And so by that stage, it's too late to do anything. Like, they have done their job. The magpies have had a great feed. Your lawn is cactus, like, it's gone. So, so that's why I personally like clover. Other people put early insecticides, which is sort of, now you put that in while the larvae are really, really small, and that gets rid of them as well. So,
I guess if you're struggling with the frost, do you find that the clover as well is good in that sort of environment? Is it kind of like an all-rounder?
Yeah, because it stays green. Well, see, it stays green all winter while the grass has gone down. And you tend to, like, if you get a lot of fogs and stuff like that, like even the fescues, they'll get a bit of rust on them. So the clover will keep it really nice and green. And then once it warms up and it dries out a little bit, the grass will, fescue in Kentucky will come through that, and then the clover will sit in underneath your grass. So
it's a bit like
and then a lot of
act.
the lawns I do. Yeah, absolutely. And plus being a nitrogen fixer as well, so it puts the nitrogen in also. But what I'll also do is, so I've just finished all the lawns that I look after, I top dress with cow manure. So I'll run a light layer every year, sort of August, September, I'll run a layer of cow manure over the top as a top dress. So it puts a bit of organic matter in and it gets rid of any thatch. So basically your thatch just gets composted underneath that, gets good water penetration, and it's sort of, because clover doesn't like any extra nitrogen, it sort of slows the clover enough, but not enough to kill it.
If you've been thinking about getting to ride-on mowing this season, or you want to upgrade the ride-on mower you currently have a look at the Hustler range. Like I said before, I've been using them for almost 10 years now, and I can honestly say they are some of the most versatile and reliable machines I have ever used. One of the things about hustlers is you can use them on overgrown jobs, and I did a lot of those in the early days, but take that same mower and put it on a highly manicured lawn and it still does a really good job. Hustlers have a great range all the way from the 34-inch dash to the Super 104, which is a 104-inch wide mower. Add to that the Raptor range, Fast Track, X1, Super Z, Super S, and the Hustler likely have a mower that suits your budget and your goals. In addition, Hustler have 130 plus dealers across the country, which means heaven forbid, if something were to go wrong, the help is not far away. And that is crucial if you're relying on that machine for your income. I'm really honored that Hustler have come on board to support the podcast because it's a brand I truly believe in. If you want to get into riding mowing this season, like I said, check out the range. Thank you, Hustler, for support. Hustler, here to work. So, what sort of plants would you be recommending for this climate, which is, the Canberra climate is as you're saying, really cold or very dry. So you need plants that do both, and they're kind of rare. So what are your go-tos in that environment?
Well, and the other thing too is it can also be really wet. So we can go from 300 mil annual average to 1,000 mil annual average on a heavy clay soil. It's really, I try to be as diverse as possible. So obviously, I'll use a lot of plants that are Mediterranean in origin. So things like, teucriums, lavenders, olives, I'll use a lot of them. Hedging plants, I'll use Escalonias, Iliagnus, so that's Russian olives. Bog standard things like Nandina. Agapanthus are always a good go-to. If someone needs to, I'll use Photinia. I'll try to avoid that. As I said, callistemons are absolutely brilliant. So they're So I have a very big list of different plants I go to depending on the site, because I've got sites that are on granite, and I've got sites that are heavy clay, and then you've got the new developments. So they're on whatever the builders left behind, which is generally not very good.
Yes, yeah, of course. Yeah, builders and garden quality are not things that usually get in the same sentence very often.
No, and see, in the old days, they used to develop Canberra streets. They used to put all the street trees in, and you weren't allowed to take, before you built, you weren't allowed to take any soil away from the building, from the house site. It all had to stay. So everything was done well before. And so, those older suburbs are really sought after because you've still got the original soil there. It hasn't been tampered. It hasn't been, So, any of those older suburbs where the big trees are now, they're really, they're obviously, isn't it amazing? Like when you've got a beautiful avenue of trees, everyone wants to live there, but it takes 100 years to get there. So someone's got to start.
The suburbs that are just down the road here, they are ex-farmland. And so there was no trees cleared to make the land. They were just big paddocks. And they've kept some of the trees that were along the, the fence lines. How a lot of these farmlands used to have, the trees along the fence line, and they're along the roads, and a lot of their roads are lined up with where they're old. And those bits where the big trees are just so much more, especially for me, so much more attractive places. And you actually notice the coolness when you're working around there. It's all that sort of stuff. And the rest of it is just, mate, Colorbond roof after Colorbond roof after Colorbond roof, occasional tile roof, but still bloody grey. More Colorbond, and you can see it going down the hill, and it is the most tragic looking thing. Turn a little bit left, and you're like, oh, that's beautiful, big trees. So underrated. People complain about these street trees they're getting in their gardens, and I get it. If you have a 50 square meter front yard and they put this massive honking tree in it, you're like, what are you doing? But at the end of the day, when they become mature, people go, it's the most sought after thing they've ever had. And you're in that awkward phase in the middle, which is a little bit annoying, but yeah. Anyways, that's my rant over.
No, well, see, I like to plant, people go, I want a fast growing tree. And I go, well, let's plant multiple things. It's okay to edit a garden. It's okay to take stuff out. I get customers come into my garden, and so most of my customers come through my garden, and I'll show them old stumps that I've left. I said, this was an acacia I planted. It was only 7 years old. It got to 7 meters, and I'm like, okay, I need to take that out. but I had something already planted next to it. So I had a much slower growing tree. So I could get the cover and could get the shade and get everything going. And then I go, but it's okay. I could cut it out. I could use the trunk for firewood. Everything else went to mulch. I said, I'm always doing that. So it's always like that process. I said, I always use an analogy like after a bushfire. You don't get the day after a bushfire, a week, a month, a year, 10 years after a fire or a major storm comes through. It's not the same as it was the day after the storm. I said, neither is a garden. A garden is always changing, and it's okay as a human to go into that garden and go, oh, I don't really like that anymore. That doesn't really suit. That's too shady, or it's not, or I need something else here. It's all right to prune it. It's all right to take it out. Like it's okay. Like it's not a bad thing to remove something. And I remember reading a story a while ago on gardeners. It was in, I think it was 97 or 98. It was in the Garden of Versailles in France. And they'd ended up with a whole heap of, I think they were sycamore trees. And they were thousands and thousands. They wanted to take them all out because the gardeners were like, this is not to the style. And they were basically weed trees. Anyway, a huge storm came through and blew most of them over. And they were just cheering. The worst thing was, obviously, it did a lot of damage to ancient statues and ponds and all the rest of it. But the point is that it's all right. Like a garden is never going to be static. It's always going to be dictated by growth. And that growth is like, it's part of humans and how we deal with that growth and how we prune that growth and what. And I guess that's where I am within my clients is that I've got probably 70 to 100 different, and they're all homeowners, so I don't do any body corporates anymore. I've got some incredible people who are absolute plant nerds. They're collectors. You walk into the garden and you go, what on earth is this? Like they might have, it's the first time I've ever seen this plant, and they've imported the seed from overseas and they've done all these things. So, I'll go to gardens like that, and then I'll go to a garden who is he was retired from the military. So he loves the way I do his hedges because they are so, they're neat, square. So I've got everything from the wild garden, like what Mel would have, to the military garden, that's just, it's neat. It's got the cloud pruning, the topiaries. And I really love that diversity in the garden. Like I love having that collector's garden, and I love having a garden where I can do cloud pruning, spirals. I can get that hedging, absolutely mint. So that's what I really like, and working with. So every single one of my clients they all partake in their garden. So they all actively garden,
right,
in one way or another, whether or not it's just mowing the lawn.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, we've got a little bit of delay, so I might be cutting you off at the wrong point. Sorry, but I was going to say that's the opposite of us. You've got these people who are active in their garden, whereas the people who come to us are like, we want a nice garden, and I never want to put my hand in it at all. I just want to come home and just go, thank you so much for doing it. But we have had people over the years who, especially the older generation, who still enjoy getting out there and still enjoy doing something. Maybe they don't have the physicality, but yeah, it's very strange to hear that you have that many clients who are also getting active themselves.
Yeah, no, so they're all like, so it varies. Some were too active. So I trained them so well that they no longer needed me. So they actually, particularly so I networked a lot with landscapers. So to get new jobs, and because a lot of people get a new landscape done, and I think it was on your 11 tips for business. So someone who gets a professional landscaper in to build their garden, they're not gardeners. Like if they were gardeners, like most of my clients are, they do it themselves. So they might get a little bit of landscaping help, but they even love to do a little bit of paving or whatever. Like they really have a crack, and that's who I've sort of gone with. But I do have some of those gardens which have been professionally landscaped and they've been professionally designed. And I say, get me in. The day the landscaper leaves, I need to come in, because I said it's like a baby. It's that first year, 2 years. It's all that formative stuff, especially if you've got topiaries and stuff. Don't wait until that hedge is fence height, and now you want Now you want it pruned and thick because it's gotten top heavy and someone's just taken the top off, and we call it bird's nest. It just turns into a bird's nest. So you get this one little stick, there's nothing at the bottom, you get this bird's nest, and then you get a bit of rain and it just flops over, and it's the most useless thing. And you go, oh, what can you do? And then they stake it, and then they try and torture it, and they pull it this way and that way. So it's not going to work. I've got to cut it in half now and let it regrow. And they're like, so that's what so that's what I do with a lot of landscapers, and I get right in there really early. And I think it was on your Hunter Valley podcast about the lawn mowing. It's like, do it regularly. Like if you do it, so all my customers are monthly. So I just go to them every month on the same day, every month. I just head out there roughly the same time, and just go and we tinker. So I'll give them a list of homework, what they need to do. And so I say, yep, you need to do this, this, and this. Oh, yeah, underneath the power lines, because in the ACT, in the older suburbs, all the power lines run through the backyards. So in the backyards, underneath the power lines is where you get all your seeds that are dispersed by birds. So all your privets, your selkirk, because your power lines are in the backyard. So invariably, so that's where all your weed trees are. So I'll give them all homework. Okay, this is what you need to do. And then I'll be like, okay, check the irrigation, make sure. It's just like, so I'm always making sure that they're not turning their place into a rice paddy. But I said, okay, we don't need it, or if rain's imminent, we haven't had rain for a while. It's like, okay, turn your irrigation on now. Let's prime everything ready for the rain that might come. But I said, it's all primed, ready, because our soil, I don't think it's as bad as Perth sand, obviously, but it gets hydrophobic if you haven't had rain. Like we haven't had rain now for 4 weeks, which I know sounds funny. But
it's a weird time of year to not have rain for 4 weeks.
It's a very strange time of year, and it's so dusty, and everything is covered in pollen, and it's just blooms are getting smashed. But anyway, so that's what I always say, like water before the rain comes. So because you want to prime that soil up, especially in our silty loams, you prime it up and things like that. So I'll text message customers is like, okay, yep, no, run it now. And it's really, I love my little niche, and they'll clean up. Most of them will clean up after me, so I can make a mess. I'll just leave it. So I'll just leave this great big mess of leaves and branches and everything, and they'll just clean up after me because they don't need me to pull a rake. They know how to rake. It's not hard. So, which is great. As someone who's 51 years old, I find cleaning up is harder than doing the actual work.
So it seems like you really value that sort of, it's almost like you have a working relationship with the clients, and it's almost like maybe you're a coach or a personal trainer as well as the actual guy doing the work.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. That's exactly what I am. And that's what I decided I wanted to do. Having done body corporates in my previous job, I just didn't want to, like, we'd get emails, they were sent to, from the body, the people who are running in the body corporate. You get emails at 11 o'clock at night, midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. You get to work, and all of a sudden you've got all these emails. And obviously he's drinking, the guy who's complaining is drinking more and more scotch. So the emails are getting angrier and angrier and angrier.
Yeah.
Going, I just can't deal with this. Like, the gardens look immaculate, like, and we were only there, and we go fortnightly, and, the wind blew. So the oak leaves fell off, and there's a few more leaves there. And it's just like, well, look, you don't have to be nasty about it. Just say, look, would you be able to come past? And yeah, sure. Some crews going past, we'll quickly do it, because we did the same thing. We did packages. So I was just like, okay, this is a yearly cost. This is what it is. This is what we do. The lawns will be this, weeds, blah, blah, blah. Because it's the only way I found you could run crews. You couldn't do it residentially. You needed that commercial work. You needed contracts. You needed packages. So you needed to know how much money you're getting in per month, per year, per 2 years. Otherwise, you just, when you've got all those workers, you need to make sure you can pay them.
Recently, I made a small business course called the Aussie Green Biz Mastery Course. It's for people who are starting out in the industry, or who have been in maybe for a year or two, and they're really good at the gardening side, but they struggle on the business side. There's 47 lessons that cover everything from how to get great clients to how to work out your pricing, how to work out a system that's efficient, and ultimately set up a business that is going to be successful. Essentially, what I did is I thought about myself as a 19-year-old. I thought, looking back when I started my business, what would I tell my 19-year-old self to help him avoid all the stupid mistakes that I ended up making and have success in a much quicker time frame? If you know somebody who wants to start a business, it's made for them. If you're struggling in your business, you love the industry, and you want a successful business, this is made for you. We recently added the option as well to break down the payment over 4 months, so it makes it a little bit more affordable for those who are just starting out. The course is called the Aussie Green Biz Mastery course. For more information, follow the link. If you're wanting to upgrade your lawn care this season, jump on today's sponsor, The Lawn Shed. Lawn Shed stock a full range of everything you need for great lawn care, from fertilizers to wetting agents to soil amendments to pre-emergent, post-emergent, plant growth regulators, everything that you could need. Their products are actually the products used by stadiums across the country. I've seen them in the sheds there when I've done tours. My opinion has always been that if you're going to charge for a service, use the best quality stuff you can get. So jump on the Lawn Shed today, sign up for a trade account, and tell them that you heard about their services through the podcast. Thank you so much for supporting Lawn Shed. Yeah, exactly. The one-stop jobs, and people don't realize how much administration goes into one-stop jobs as well. But you do all this work administratively, and then you send it out to a crew, and they do one job, and then like, oh, where's the next one? Well, it's a very stressful business model to run when you've got employees. If you've got some sort of regular income, you can relax a bit.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I don't even quote anymore. I just go, look, I'm in a pretty unique and fortunate position, but I go, look, I'll charge you per hour, and I'll just come and do the job. I said, if you want me, I'll just book it in. I said, I don't have time to do quoting, anything like that. I don't need to do that. I just say, look, this is what I do, and I'll come on this date, and I'll give you 4 hours. And I was talking to another friend about this, and I was just like, I actually don't look that fast. So like when I'm working, but I'm incredibly efficient because I can turn up to a job. I just get my tools and I just look at it and I go. And I had one customer years ago. She said, "Oh, geez, you're a bit expensive for rose pruning." I said, "Yeah, I am." But I said, I'll cost you half price what the last guy did. And I knocked on the door. It was like an hour. I'd finished all her roses. I knocked on her door. I said, "Oh, look, do you want me to do this, this, and this, and this?" Because I have a minimum of 2 hours. And I said, "Look," I said, "I can do." She goes, "You finished the roses?" I said, "Oh, yeah, roses are done. They're all done. Everything's packed away. They're all done." Gave them a spray with lime sulfur. It's all done. And she's like, "Wow, okay, you are really," because I said, when you get so proficient at something, you just don't have to. I can just look at it and go, okay, this is exactly what I need to do, the results that I'm going to get, because it's just a memory game. It's just like, okay, I know if I prune here, I do this, I do that, boom, it's just done, so you don't. Whereas someone who's young, like I've coached a few younger guys, they've got to think a little bit more. Okay, yeah, if I prune this, what's going to happen and things like that. So that's where I get the real win. And so that's why I can fit quite a few jobs in the day, and it's just efficiency. It's been really, really efficient.
It's why comparing gardeners on hourly rate means nothing. You have somebody with 1 week experience, it'll take them 5 hours. And if they're $50 now, the total cost $250. Somebody with 50 years experience comes in at $250 an hour, and they get it done in 1 hour. It's the same price. And everyone's going to go for the cheaper guy because they think it's going to be more expensive. It's like, no. The experience really, it's like, like you say, there's decision making. There's, especially with a rose, someone who's not experienced or a hedge or something, they walk back 15 times just to look at it to make sure it's straight. Someone who's got a steady hand, they've been doing it for a while, they go in, they cut it, it's dead straight because they've done it 500,000 times. They love it. Really sharp equipment. It's done perfectly, and they're off. Some other guy with some blunt hedges and a little bit less sure of themselves takes twice as long, and the finish is not as good. There's a lot of that going on in the industry, and people, they judge off an hourly rate, and they're probably a little bit too quick to do so.
Yeah, well, it's funny because when you say that, so he costs $250, but what ends up happening is it ends up costing him about $750 because I then come in, I have to fix up his mistakes and then make them good. So it actually costs them a whole lot more. Whereas if they just got someone in who was really good to do it first time. So yeah, it ends up costing them double. So yeah, it's just, and yeah, that's right. Like, it's just like, price is never, so if somebody, so basically my customers I've chosen because I like their attitude, and because I worked in retail for so long, I get a gauge on the phone straight away. Or if someone just comes up to me, and the first thing they ask, so I was packing up my ute, I was finishing up, and lady drives up, stops, winds the window down, said, "Are you a gardener?" I said, yeah. She says, "How much do you charge?" I said, "Oh, I'm too busy." And that's instantly if she asks how much I charge, there's no way. If that's the first question, if somebody asks, they phone up, 2 weeks before Christmas, they phone up and they go, "Oh, can you come and do this job? It's a 5-minute job." And no such thing as a 5-minute job. "Oh, how much do you charge?" It's 2 weeks before Christmas. And I've said this to someone, look, if I can come and do it, which I can't, because I've got some of my clients I've had for 15 years. So, because they've come over from my previous job. So I've known them longer than I've known my own daughter. So they're always going to get priority before Christmas. So I know, I'll know in advance whether or not they're having the family over for Christmas. Like, I'll know already which customers have got family coming over for Christmas. So they get priority. This person is rang up 2 weeks before Christmas. I said, "Yeah, I'll come. I'll charge you $1,000 for 2 hours." And they're like, oh. And I'm like, "Well, if you want me," I said, because then I'll work longer because it's later. And they're like, "Oh, okay, thanks." Because I just don't need that attitude. Like, I don't want to work with those sort of people or those clients. And I mean, a quick funny story was one of my clients who I still have now, they sold, it was one of my favorite gardens. It was amazing. It was incredible. We'd spent a lot of time working on it. But anyway, they sold the property. I get a phone call from the new owner, and this is millions of dollar property it sold for, and she calls me up. She goes, "So when are you coming?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "To do the garden." I said, "Well, I'm not doing the garden anymore." She says, "Don't you come with the sale of the house?" And I said, No. I work for the client, I don't come with the house. The house is sold separately. I'm sold separately. And that's one of my rules, is that if a client sells their house, I don't go back to that garden. Like, I become so emotionally invested in a garden that I stay with the client. So if they go to a new house, I go with them. Like, that's how I work. And like I said, most of my clients have been to my garden. They've been into my house. We've had food and stuff like that. I mean, I made one of the mistakes. I had a client, and unfortunately she passed away. And I don't drive past old gardens. And I drove past this garden, and we'd spent years with trees, planting it, everything. And I drove past, and I was just like, holy shit, the new owners, nothing, everything was gone. All there was they put a second driveway in. They put the biggest caravan I've seen in my life. There was not a tree left. There was no grass left. There was nothing. It was just concrete paving and granite. And I'm just like, why did I do that to myself? It's just like, don't drive past old jobs. I just leave it. It's in the past. It just shattered me. I'm just like, you just can't do it. Like, so yeah.
That relationship connection is really strong for you. Like, I can see that, hear it in the way you're talking about your clients, working with them, and that kind of emotional investment you have in it. And that's I don't think you're alone in that, but it's not that common. It's not that common that a lot of people see it very transactionally.
Well, see, that's what I believe. I believe that not every job needs to be done for money. And as I said, I'm in a fortunate position where I am in business and what I can do. And don't get me wrong, I still charge and I still make a really nice annual income. But not every, like I have a beautiful old lady, and we have an hour for bloody morning tea, and it's just like, because she's European as well, and she just brings out all this food, and it's cakes and it's biscuits, because I'm too thin and I work too hard. And she's just like, and she'll pay me for that hour. Like, she'll just go, and honestly, during COVID, because I could still work and I could still go to gardens, and it was part of it was part of
The service, part of what you delivered.
Yeah, like, so a lot of the people, they weren't able to get out, so it was a big connection. So they had their partners or what, but it was a really big connection with a lot of people, and so I've really kept that. Like, so really kept a really close connection with most of my clients, and really, really enjoy it.
Yeah, it is rare. I'm definitely I'm on the other end of the spectrum. Not that I think that's the right way to go about it. It's just different personality types. And some clients, they're on the other end of the spectrum as well. They don't want to see you. They don't. I mean, they're not in a rude way, but they appreciate you. They say thank you, and then they want to go inside and have some time with their kids or whatever they're doing. They don't want to have that chat. And then some clients, that's half the service. They love the connection. They haven't seen anybody all day and they want to chat with somebody. And it's great when they find each other, because if you get a client who's a talker and then the gardener isn't, you're in trouble, and the other way around. If the gardener's a talker and the client just wants to go inside, Actually, I'll tell you honestly, I had a lady who I was talking with, who was a software engineer. We're talking about something, and she found out I was a gardener, and she was like, whenever my gardener comes, I pretend I'm not home because he's a talker and I don't want to talk and I don't want to be rude and tell him I don't want to talk. So I just pretend I can't hear him or whatever. And so anyways, you get all sorts of people,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of my clients work from home, so I know, okay, well, they know I'm there, and once they're off what they're doing, they'll come out and say hello. So that might be 2 hours. And I know who they are, and I know what they are. And it's just like, yep, don't bother them now. Don't go. I don't have to knock on the door or anything like that, because I'm so regular. So I go, so I do a 9-day fortnight. So next Monday is the fourth Monday of the month. I know exactly where I am. My customers know where I am. They know roughly what time I'll be turning up within, 5 or 10 minutes, and they just know. So the second Tuesday, they know so it's all done so regular that they can set their watch by when I'm coming. I had one customer, I was 15 minutes late, and she's ringing me up. She's going, "Is everything all right? Like, what's going on?" I says, "No, it's all right. I just had to pop past Bunnings. I had to grab some stuff before work. Sorry." I was like, because obviously, I can finish a bit later or whatever. Like, it's fine. And I just thought, I was really chuffed by that. Like, it's just like, we're really watching what I was doing, and you're really concerned. I'm 15 minutes late. What the hell is going on? Like, so I really, really cherish, and I really value my clients in that way. So, I mean, as I said, that's a real niche that like a lot of people wanted. Like, they just like, oh, thank God we found someone who knows what they're doing, loves our gardens, is really careful where they tread, because that's another thing. Don't just walk through the garden like, it's like, because a lot of these people, really be careful where you tread. And I had another customer, it was 2 hours. She goes, "I haven't heard you." She said, "Every other gardener, the default option is get the steel 2-stroke hedger out, and away they go. And everything is just done with a hedger." Whereas oh, no, I'll use a hedger, but when I need to. So some things don't need a hedge. Some things need proper pruning. With one of my 5 Silky Saws that I have.
I've got one just over there. What size are you usually going with? Silky Saw size. Come on.
Well, I've got 5. So they're different blade, so different teeth per inch. So different lengths. I've got Sugi's one of my favourite. I think that's 450 mil. Then I got, I think I got the Gomboy. I've got a couple of them. So they've got different teeth sizes, but also the thickness of the blade. So then you've got a much thicker blade, and then you've got the really thin blade. So therefore you get a really good surgical cut. But then also the shape of the blade. Some have got straight blades, some are curved blades. So they're obviously all pull cuts. But I think the Sugi also has a vine. It has a vine cutter on the end, so you can actually just grab. So, but it's really good for grabbing branches and things like that. So Silky Saws they're unbelievable. They're just an arborist friend. Yeah, and they are just so good. And then once the blade dies, my neighbour, he loves making knives. So I give him the Japanese steel. I go, "This blade's finally dead. Here, do you want the blade?" And he's like, "Yes, please. That's awesome." So he goes, "Beautiful Japanese folded steel." He goes, "Yep, love it."
Yeah, I've got the 27 or 270 millimeter Gomboy. And I think for me, pretty fine tooth, pretty fine blade, right? Because if you're wanting to do, for me, my opinion, if you really want to cut down a tree, you know, and you just, if it's just a hack job, reciprocating saw, you know, if you just want to get in there, I know you probably have a difference of opinion with all your 5 silkies, but I'm like, no, reciprocating saw, whatever hack job blades you've got, cut it out. I mean, chainsaw as well, but I'm talking, you know, just getting in there, cutting roots. I love reciprocating saws; they're awesome. But no, a silky saw for a nice finish. You know, you can cut it nice and clean, and they're really not. It seems like cutting a tree by hand it would be hard, but it really not. And it's kind of that size where you fold it up. It's got that little plastic case it comes in. You fold it up. I might just go grab it, you know. But you fold it up. It's nice and clean. It just sits in the back of the ute, rolls around because it's folded. The blade doesn't get dinged or anything. I've actually got some other goodies here to show you because it just happens to have them next to me. I want to get your opinion on them. But yeah, I think for the price as well, I mean, what are we going at there? I don't know if you can see much of that, but I can't remember what they cost. But it's one of the cheapest tools you're going to get. One of the cheapest. This is like pretty much brand new. As you can see, I've hardly used that because I don't do much anymore. But 240, there you go. I lied. I said 270. They might even do 270. But yeah, 240. So 24 centimeters. It's big enough to cut most things you're going to want to cut by hand. They're my go-to. That one. And I'm sure there's other brands that are good too, but I don't know. You use a silky and you're like, why would I go somewhere else?
Yep. And realistically, the prices aren't, again, like the initial purchase price, the first time you use it is forgotten straight away. It's like I was at the local lawnmower shop and I needed a few new wheels for my Honda HRU. And he goes, the wheels, they're $55 each. And I said, seriously, I've had this mower for 25 years. They're plastic wheels. They got a few cracks in them, but they got no tread on them. Like I've worn them down that much, mainly from mowing at home, self-propelled. And I said, this mower has been it's been, abused so much. I get it serviced. I take it in. I say to everyone, I said, get your mower serviced in Canberra. I said, go and get it serviced in June. Get a full service. Get them to do the big service then while you're not using it. Don't turn up in September and expecting it done the next day, like every other clown's doing. I said, get it done then, get the full service. And as I say, so the Honda HRU is fantastic. And yeah, like he's like, ooh, and I said, that's fine. I said, those wheels will now outlive me.
Totally.
So that's the same with Silky Saws, any good quality tool.
Well, let me get your opinion on this, right? So I've got my Felco 2s here, right?
Yes.
Needs a clean. All right. Everybody use Felco's tools. 2s, they're standard. They're great. I was having a chat with Tony from Cut Above Tools, right? And Tony's probably thinking, why don't you talk about my saws? Thanks, Luke. Well, I'll talk about this, Tony. I was talking about, I have an Anvil Lopper over there, a Wolfgarten Anvil Lopper. And for those who don't know the difference between bypass and anvil, bypass is when the blade, like a pair of scissors, passes the other blade. Normal secateurs are bypass secateurs, right? Most loppers, most secateurs, they're all bypass. Anvil is when the blade cuts directly against a solid, flat area. And I was like, Tony, what do you reckon about anvil secateurs? Because I've never used them. I like my Anvil Loppers. Never used the Anvil secateurs. And he sent me these Italian ones. And they're really interesting. I'm trying to put them on the camera here. But there's a nice big flat area. And the blade sits against... The blade comes in... That's right. There's a nice big flat area there. And the blade actually shuts down and sits against that. I'm trying to put it on camera there. I don't know if you're getting that. But it doesn't pass it. And so it's cutting against it. I honestly got them just before I left and then saw Tony over at the Makita event. But anyways, have you tried Anvil secateurs before? I know some people rave about them. They love them. They find them easier to use. That's why I was curious. I haven't had a chance to properly use them yet. Do you switch them up? Is there any theories or ideas you have on any sort of secateurs stuff?
Basically, anything more than about, none of my finished cuts are with, like, so secateurs essentially, depending on, so like if they can cut say 10 or 12 mil, I won't even do like 5 to 6 mils with the secateur. Anything bigger than that will be finished with a saw. Like, simple. I will not use anvil. I will not. Everything will be finished with a saw. So
tell me your thinking behind that, because that's really, I don't know if anyone's been that pedantic before about it. If not in an insulting way. Hope you don't take that as an insult, but
No.
that's a level of care. Tell me why you think about it that way.
Well, basically, I look at a tree, like, I hate headhunters and coat hangers and anything like that. So I want the optimum healing of a plant. So I want to prune it so it's going to heal the fastest. Because for me, it's like, well, if you've got a cavity in your tooth, you want that to be cleaned up. You want it to be filled properly. You don't want that decay to get in, because I'm looking at 20, 30, 40 years' time. Some plants don't really matter, but I still want a really nice finish. It's just like I see guys using, and girls, and they're using hedges, or they're using secateurs like they're loppers, and but loppers I'll only use to get rid of the weight, and then I'll use the saw to finish off. Like like roses are only ever done with secateurs and saws. Like, I never use. Sorry, on carpet roses, you can do anything with them. I'll use Kamaki loppers on those, but I still want a really nice, clean, neat finish, because I want people to know that I wasn't there, but I was there. So everything needs to be really neat, really clean. The pruning cuts need to be absolutely mint and bang on, so that everything just looks like it should be. So there's no tears, there's no cuts, everything needs to look really precise and straight, and really, I guess I want it to be as textbook horticulturally correct as possible.
Right, and so why do you feel that that's really important to you? Is it for your own sake? Like, sometimes, like for me, if I walk past rubbish, sometimes, I get pricked by that, and I'm like, I've got to go pick up the rubbish and put it in the bin. Like, I'm walking past for a seat at a shopping center, and I just feel like I have to pick it up. And if I walk past and I ignore it, I'm like, no, I gotta do it. And it's just this thing in me where it's like, it's just caring about the 1%ers, and it doesn't really matter, because the cleaner's going to pick it up at some stage, and there's 5,000 other pieces of rubbish around. I'm not picking them all up, but I just feel like I need to tick that box for my own sanity. Is that kind of what it's like for you? That you just feel like the textbook thing has got to be done properly?
Well, yeah, and it's just a great way to differentiate. So it's like, it keeps my niche, because it's just like, because you notice something that is done. You don't notice something that is done really well, but when it's done badly, you notice it. Like, it's just like, if someone comes in and they just lop a tree off. They like, oh, we just need it down we need it down a meter. Someone comes in and goes, okay, I'm going to measure, and I'm just going to cut it off level by a meter. Whereas I can actually come in and reduce it, and you go, did you reduce it? Oh, you did. Wow. Okay. But I can't really notice, but you've done it, but I don't notice. So that's the trick, that it's just like, they know you've been, but they can't see what you've done. Which
I know
for me,
exactly what you're talking about with that tree reduction. It's like, you pick where you cut it in the right spot. You don't cut straight across the top. I mean, if you wanted it to have that box square hedge, you might want to do that. But even then, on a hedge reduction, if you wanted to be, say, I'll just try and describe it. Say, if you want it at eye level, you cut it at chin level, so that the new fresh growth comes back up to your eye level, and you're cutting that clean stuff in the future, rather than cutting at eye level and you always have that stump there sticking through that never regrew properly because you cut at that random spot, and all that sort of stuff.
Yep. That's exactly what I guess. It's also about how you're explaining to the client, like how you're able to educate them and how you're able to articulate what you want to do and why you're doing it. And again, that's where I think years of experience in doing it, that's what I enjoy. I get such a buzz out of it. I mean, I was volunteering when I was 16 years old, pulling weeds in the bush. Like, so I was trained as a bush regenerator. So that's what I did. Like, it's been my entire life. I wanted to be a park ranger. Then I realised park rangers, mostly what they do is clean toilets and pick roadkill up off the road. So I'm like, I thought park rangers got to be in the bush all the time, but they don't. So I'm like, well, that's rubbish. I don't want to do that. So hence I become a gardener, because it's something I can be outside, I can do it. And then, but also, like friends of mine say who just work office jobs, it's like, you actually do something. Like, you actually, and I think you've posted stuff about that, like, you know, when you've mown a lawn, like you say even if you've taken 15 mils off a lawn, because I used to mow football and AFL ovals and stuff like that, and like, people don't realise, like, to get a straight line. So we used to have, you know, big out fronts, and it was actually really fun to try and get those lines and get it as straight as possible, because, you know, people were going to see it, and you know, but you see something tangible. And the one thing I love about this business is that it just repeats. So there's always work. Like, it just, plants grow. They need to be pruned. They need to be something, this or that, or need to be replanted because stuff dies. Like, you know, that's another one. People go, oh, you know, it died. I said, trust me, I kill so many plants. I mean, I'm a plant murderer. Like, it just happens because I try stuff, they die. You know, I said, it's life. I said, it's just, you know, it's okay.
Yep.
Like, we'll look okay. You know, we'll try and find out why it died. You know, was it something, you know, like blah, 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 you know, was it too much water? We found out, oh, shit, this one died because the dog kept pissing on it. And that was its spot. It would pee on it all the time, and it just killed it. It's just like, okay, perfect. That's why we know why it died. And we just leave it there, let the dog keep pissing on it so it doesn't go and kill something else. So,
Your handles piss a bit better. Go to a local nursery, like, hey, I've got a unique problem. Do you have dog piss tolerant plants? You know, what have you got?
Yeah, actually, I don't think that exists. I mean, yeah, like, I mean,
Not
yeah,
as a
so we just got
category.
to, no. So, but yeah, I mean, well, talking dogs are far out. I know you wanted a funny story. Can I give you a funny story now?
Go for it.
It's pretty horrendous, but there's no visual involved. So it's one of my clients. They had a stump grinder came in, ground out a stump in the middle of the lawn, which that happened just before they bought the property. So they moved in the property, turned on the lawn irrigation. It's like, okay, well, you've got a geyser here, rightio. Fix the lawn irrigation, backfilled the hole, and I was like, shit, I don't have enough soil left. So I went, okay, I'll go up the back corner, and I looked under one of the trees, and I went, oh, look, there's a bit of a mound here. I can rake the mulch away and get a bit of soil from here to fill up and patch up the hole.
I think I know where this is going.
Well, I've dug down a little bit, and there's an Aldi shopping bag. And I go, who dumps an Aldi shopping bag? And so I cleared the bag away. All of a sudden, the stench hit me. It was the previous owners. Yeah. So, yep, it was the previous owner's dog.
Yeah.
But because it was wrapped in plastic, so it was wrapped in the plastic bag, and it was in the bag that. So when your dog or your pet gets the green dream, the vet normally puts it in like a cloth bag. So they'd put it in the cloth bag, in the plastic bag. And so I've dug and go, what the hell is this? All of a sudden, this fermented pet, the stench was unbelievable. And my client has a dog. It's come from inside the house. I hear the dog coming and going, oh, what am I going to do with this? What am I going to do with this dog now? Like, I'm just like, well, I have to bury it. As I said, the stench was incredible. So I'm going, okay, thankfully I've got chemical gloves in the ute, so I could get the chemical gloves and then just, it was like a horror movie, because then the skin peeled off the dog because it all fermented. So yeah, so I don't know how long it was in there for.
They haven't done a good job of burying it. They really haven't. I've buried a dog before. I really put some effort into that hole. That is lazy. Come on.
Oh, it was leaving in the bag, so there was no worms, no maggots, no anything, because it was only just under the surface.
Of course, yeah.
So I got it out of the bag, and then so obviously I had to send the dog. So because the dog's so interested, because this smell is just like, oh, that's really good. And it's just like, so then I reburied it. I'm like, okay, I need to get some really big pavers now to make sure the dog can't dig the previous owner's pet dog out. So now we have a little pet cemetery up the back corner now. So, but yeah, that was probably the most surprise thing that I've ever found in a backyard.
That's not the buried treasure you want to find. I can tell you that much.
The scent was pretty special. And as I said, because, I've dealt with lots of dead animals and stuff like that, but having one that was fermented in a plastic bag was just like, that was pretty special. So,
no, I don't want to deal with that. No. And you get used to, that's the thing. Being a gardener, you get used to some pretty unique smells, and you get used to being dirty and walking into spider webs and other things that creep people out. But I don't know if you can prepare yourself for that.
No, it was not a smell I've ever smelt before. So, but yeah, and then the skin peeling. It was like a horror movie, but yeah, it was. And the customer wasn't home, so I had to let him know why there was paving there and why it was a little bit of a pet cemetery now. So,
did you have to order in some sand from somewhere else?
No, see, because I dug the hole. Well, I dug the hole deep enough, and then because I had the pavers, I had enough extra soil to fill in the hole. So it all worked out in the end.
Mate. Oh, man, that's some strange stuff. I've never thought about. I have thought about like hitting rocks before. I've never really thought about uncovering as I'm digging I say like a hole for a plant or everything. I don't know why. It's never crossed my mind. Maybe I might stumble across the previous owner's dead cat or dead dog or something like that. Yeah, but it's a possibility.
Well, normally, because
sorry, we got this delay on again, but I'm just thinking what we should do is we should get people to comment on the post, on the Instagram post of this podcast or in YouTube or wherever they're watching this, what their weirdest thing they've ever uncovered digging. Because now you've opened up this can of worms. I'm sure people have found some pretty special things, some old toys that someone's buried, probably other animals. It would be an interesting comment section. I just don't know why I've never thought of that before.
Oh yeah, there'll be heaps. Obviously, garden tools like trowels and all of that sort of stuff. You find all those sort of things, But most customers, actually all clients, they've marked where the graves are. So, one spoiled cat, lived here, and they've got all those sort of things, or they put urns, or they put something there, so that there was, that that's their little pet cemetery. But I mean, I've done it. Like I've buried I buried one of my favourite chickens, and I was just like, I put her fairly deep, and I was just like, I wonder if there's anything left of her. I'm like, I've got to exhume the body and find out what was left. So, what do you reckon was left of a chicken after 6 months?
6 months.
6 months in the ground.
There'd be some bones. I would have. The way you worded that probably led me down the path that there's not enough left. But if I was just gone cold, I would have probably thought the whole skeleton's still available. Maybe some feathers.
All the feathers, the beak, no skeleton.
Wow, really?
Yep. I was so surprised.
No, I would have thought the feathers. Feathers maybe a little bit longer. I would have thought that that's strange. Why do you think that is? Why are they hardy?
Well, I think obviously because I think the feathers and the beak are made of the same material, whereas chicken bones, if they're really hollow. They're actually really quite soft. So they went. Like there was no bone. There were no bones. The skin's obviously gone. All the good meat inside, all of that's all gone. So that goes pretty quick. But yeah, the feathers and the beak, that's what was left. I was blown away. Like I just thought, wow, that is pretty cool.
Talking about decomposing feathers, completely off the idea of gardening though. People believe that maybe the dinosaurs all had feathers, or most of the dinosaurs had feathers. And we think of them as reptilian skins, but maybe they actually had feathers all over them. And I was talking about this to my wife the other day because I was like, a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and I don't know if that's one of the ones that they think had feathers. It's just not scary with feathers, is it? It's almost like cuddly. I don't care what it can do to you. It's kind of like you look at a bear. You make these bears plush toys you cuddle, but in reality, they are vicious eating. I mean, some of them, but polar bears and grizzly bears, you don't want to ever come across that. And we make the things that your kids cuddle to bed. It's like this thing would rip your arms off. But I feel like I'd start feeling that way about Tyrannosaurus Rex if it was covered in feathers. Just be a big chicken.
Yeah, except that quick story, a friend of mine is from South Africa. I said, how fast can hippos run? He says, you can't outrun a hippo. He says, that thing runs at 40k an hour. And I'm oh, yeah. Okay, yep. And he says, you don't want to get in the way between an angry hippo and his grass. So I'm like, okay, yep. That's a new perspective on a hippo. So people always bang on about snakes and spiders in Australia. I'm going, well, we don't have hippos or elephants, so or lions or tigers or any of those things. I'll take a tiger snake any day.
Yeah, I think the thing about the African animals that are dangerous is they are big and scary. And I think the thing about Australian animals is like the cassowary. Like you look at a cassowary from a distance and be like, oh, that's a big bird. Not knowing the threat that you're in. And there's some spiders that can creep up on you and you put your hand in some leaf matter and you got 30 seconds left to live, or a blue ring octopus or something small like that. I think that's the thing about the Australian stuff is you look at them and you go, I don't know, maybe you're dangerous or not. But you look at, African stuff, you're like, yes, you're huge. I'm not going near you. Australian stuff will kill you when it's, the size of your thumb.
Yeah. Well, yeah, in your Irukandji bottle, what's that? Irukandji, the jellyfish up north of Queensland. Yes. So, but anyway, that's surprise.
What a stupid idea. The most beautiful beaches you'll ever see. And if you ever go in it, if the crocs don't get you, the sharks will, or the jellyfish, or whatever other stupid animal they have in there. So you can just look from a distance, and smell. You can't actually experience the water.
Yeah. So, well, I guess as all good Australian Lawn and Garden podcasts, we've gone off tangent. So
it only took us an hour and 3 minutes. We're fine.
So, well, you do. It always goes off somewhere. It goes off the rails some way, somehow. It has to. We've got to keep up some sort of tradition. So, no, that's good. That's good. Well, no. So I just, no, it's. I mean, as I say,
let's get back. How do we get this back on track? I don't know if we can.
Well, the wind's finally died down, so obviously all of us here are just we're all a bit over the spring wind. So everyone goes, "Oh, spring's so beautiful." We go, "No, we all hate spring. Give us autumn any day." Like it's just because obviously we get September is really well known for the winds, the pollen, and that's just what happens here. And so, you get a magnolia and it looks so beautiful, and then all of a sudden the wind comes and you've got no blossom anymore because it just strips it. So
it sounds like you have a really weird set of challenges, a strange set of challenges. It's kind of it's wind and then it's dryness and then it's -6 in September, and it's like you almost can't prepare for those kind of things, sometimes.
Yeah, well, I think what we get really big diurnal ranges, and I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't factor in. Like it's something like, like even in summer, you can go, say, from 3 or 4 degrees overnight and you'll go to 31, 32. So you get these big swings. So but as I say, basically what it means is that if the plant doesn't want to grow, it won't grow.
And you can't force it. What do you think about, do you use a lot of fertilizer, even if it's organic fertilizers, in your business?
Yep. So I use organic extra. So that's basically chicken manure. So I don't use Yates products anymore. So that's a Queensland company. So I'm very, very big on family businesses. So I'll use organic extra, a bit of blood and bone, and I also quite like another Queensland company. They do rock minerals. So because our soils tend to be they're very low in boron and some of the essential elements. So basically that's what I'll use. So essentially that's everything that I'll use on the garden.
Do you ever get into you don't get into liquid kelp or anything like that?
Occasionally, but basically that's mainly for vegetables. So
yeah. Did you hear the podcast we did with Food to Soil? Because they're based out of your area as well.
How can I not heard that? I heard the one about the composting, which was the WA one.
So there's a company. They're like just south of the actual Canberra. They're in Canberra, like they live in Canberra, but they're based just outside of the metropolitan area. I can't remember what it's called, the area. But they take food waste. So Annabelle was a lady who was on the podcast. They take food waste and they turn it into fertilizer. So it's like it started off as an environmental pursuit, but they've ended up having something that's quite effective as a product as well. And that's really quite interesting to me as an idea. The product is, in inverted commas, expensive, but what does that mean? Like we talked about before, like a liter of this product versus a liter of that product, you measure it by weight, but what you're really looking for is results. So if one gets you twice as much results and it's 50% more, that's the better value for money. So I haven't, I've got some. I did some very brief trials, and it was actually doing all right, but then I had to leave on the tour. But yeah, anyways, I'd like to try it a bit more, but I think that would be something that's right up your alley. It smells quite interesting too. Like it actually smells like it's come from food. You know what I mean? Like there's almost like it doesn't smell good, but it doesn't smell like rotting fish and other weird stuff that you often get. Like compost and manures have that strange smell. It's quite a sweet smell to it. Strange.
Well, I mean, I guess it's always comes down to we feed the soil, so we're feeding the soil bacteria and the fungus rather than actually feeding the plant, because essentially that then feeds the plant. So rather than actually, because like I said to people, we're not commercial growers. We don't need to know, we're not growing cherries, and we don't need to get however many kilos per square meter off a tree, or we're not growing, like I said, we're not growing turf that needs to be used by sport every week, so, it's different. We can get away with a lot more because it's not in a commercial sense. It's not making us money. You are spending money on it because you enjoy it. You want that piece of garden. And yes, we want it to produce some fruit. And that's why I say, grow some blueberries, because blueberries are expensive. They're great to pick fresh. They're a fairly easy plant to grow. But you don't need to get this amount of crop off it. You'll get a good amount, but you don't need to get. So if you get 60% of what a commercial grower will get, that's still an awesome crop. And by using these organic products, you'll get that.
Yeah, and there's a motivation that's a bit, when you're trying to get all those 1%ers, sometimes there's like this OCD perfectionist motivation behind it. And a lot of the time in gardening, because it is a living thing, you'll end up being disappointed chasing that perfection, because you can't run a garden off a spreadsheet. You have bad weather events. You have all these other things that happen. Bugs come in this year that didn't come in last year. You weren't prepared. Your kid's a bit sick, and so you miss a couple of weekends, because life happens, all that sort of stuff. And so I think there's a relaxed nature as well, which sometimes gardening teaches to people who are a little bit more highly strung, just to let things be, and just being, I don't know, ticking most of the boxes with something that's a bit more general, especially when you're talking about for the home, your own garden. Like you say, I've felt the same way with citrus trees. People have talked about, citrus trees are very hungry and you want to feed them, so they produce lots of fruit. But then what happens? You have an orange tree and it produces 70,000 oranges. You can't eat them all, and you're trying to give them away eventually, because it's like, so why was I trying to feed it? I have too many oranges. I have too many lemons. I don't, But then, having said that, the leaves get yellow and they need a little bit of color just to make them look pretty. But yeah, the concept is, if you're following farming principles to deliver maximum result, and you don't even eat all the fruit, what were you putting the money into it for anyway?
Yeah. So, I mean, I get way more fruit. Like, I preserve a lot. I give stuff away, but I get really picky. So only the best. So anything else just goes in the compost. So it makes great compost. It's just like, well, you're not that good. So, I can give you away. And I've got a really long, fruiting season. So that's the idea is that you have something that starts in October and goes until sort of like May, hopefully early May. So, because that's kind of what as a home gardener, that's what you want. You want to just be able to tick along and grab a bit of fruit and veggies when you want it.
What sort of veggies are you growing pretty simply in that climate?
my wife's like, oh, can we grow something other than kale and potatoes and carrots? Virtually nothing grows for 4 months of the year. I've got some peas coming in now, like a shit ton of kale, like way too much kale, some spinach. I've got lettuce in the glass house, capsicums that I managed to get through the winter, which was a real struggle. Cucumbers have just gone in now as seed. So all that summer veg will go in now. Beans will, but that's all in the glass house. But they won't go out in the garden until probably end of October, early November.
So you're starting them in a pot? Is that what you do?
Yeah. So they all get started in seed trays. But anything like, so kale, broccoli, obviously I'll put potatoes in now. Like obviously that goes in the seed potato. Tomatoes get started in a pot. But things like rocket, that'll just all get broadcast seed. Carrots are direct in the ground because you can't transplant them. They'll go in fairly soon as new season's crop. The hardest thing with veggies is always you get a glut, but it's always about just successive planting. Like that's the hardest thing, because it's like every 3 weeks, got to sow some more lettuce now because it's going to go to seed and you want that young tender leaves, and it's just like, bloody hell, got to sow again. So veggies take most of my time in the garden. Most of the rest of the garden looks after itself, but fruit and veggies on a bigger scale, so we don't have to. So it supplements what we have to buy. Is basically, because I live on 12 acres, so it's about trying to grow as much as we can to supplement. Because you can never grow everything you need. Like I always say, no, you're supplementing what you have to buy. That's all. Like I haven't bought carrots. This is a really hard time of year. They call it the hunger season. So coming into September, October, because you've just had nothing through winter, nothing's growing. And then what happens is with anything that's made it through, all it wants to do is go to seed now. So then it becomes inedible. You get that lag time. And then with the summer crops, you've got to pull them out early enough to get your winter crops in, because if you get your winter crops in too late, they just do nothing. So it's that rule. So you've got to have enough beds and open ground to allow, broccoli's got to go in. They sort of got to go in January, but your tomatoes are only getting going. So you've got to make sure you've got enough space to get that winter stuff in, because if you put it in April, it's pointless. It just doesn't happen. Like I've got quite a few followers out in Perth, and I just laugh. I go, like Mel's garden, I go, what the hell? Like it's all happening now. Like it's just like your garden is, whereas mine's doing absolutely nothing. Whereas her summer garden does nothing because she doesn't have enough water. It's too hot. It's too dry. Whereas for me, I had a bit of water, and summer is absolutely brilliant.
So you got a lot of veggies. You got a lot of land there. Have you got big plans for what you want to do with it, or is it sometimes you're biting off more than you can chew? Because, like you say, you spend a lot of time on a couple of veggies, and it's a bit difficult. Like, do you want to turn that into eventually this massive garden, or you just like the space there?
No, so I've stopped. So I've got about an acre of garden. The veggies and the fruit are all in underneath. They're about 440 square metres. Is all complete anti-aviary, so to stop all the animals. No. So the garden is absolutely stopped. Like it is not expanding any further. So I've got roads and fences, and it's just like that's it. The garden stops there, because otherwise you can just keep going and going and going. So
exactly.
So a lot of the garden has to look after itself. But like when people say, what fruit tree should I buy? Fruit and veggies they take a little bit extra time, compared to the ornamental garden. Like if you've got a buxus hedge in Canberra, it might only need trimming once or twice a year. That's it. Like that's all you need to do with it. And it's done. Whereas veggies need to be attended to all the bloody time.
Yeah, they are. It's very disappointing as well when you spend all this time growing something that doesn't taste that good because you don't know what you're doing. Not that I would ever have done that before. Everything I've ever grown is perfect, but I've heard from others. But no, I think that's the veggie side of it. It sounds like it's a lot more work. Because like for us, if we put tomatoes in the ground, and maybe it's the same for you now, but you just put tomatoes in the ground, you'll get 400,000 tomatoes if you just put enough water on them and the soil's, half decent. And, that if you put more love into it, they probably would be bigger and juicier and maybe taste a little bit better. But having said that, it's a different climate. But for me, like when you start going down the carrot route and everything else, you're really into it. You really love it. And people who really love it, it's not a labor. They're doing it for fun. It's an actual hobby.
Like my wife says, like, my God, like when you eat a carrot that comes out of our garden as opposed to a shop bought carrot, it's just so full of flavour. Like it just tastes so different. Like it's a completely different. It smells different. It tastes different. I mean, but then she goes, oh, okay, they're going woody now, so they're about to go to flower. So it's just like, bugger. So it's just like, as I said, it is a tasting, and it has taken a long time to get there. So and there's a smugness factor. There's a smugness factor as well. Yeah, there's a smugness factor as well. Growing some of your own food, you can't help but feel smug. Like, when you got fish and chips and veggies and stuff, and it's all come out of your garden, and you've gone and caught the fish, like, what's better than that? Like that's, you go, the only thing that you bought was the olive oil. Like it's just like, you go, yeah, that's pretty cool. I feel pretty smug right now. So,
exactly.
Yeah. What is there's always memes about, growing tomatoes and the satisfaction of growing a tomato is, I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's, it really is like getting that tomato is, I guess food is just one of those things, isn't it?
It is. It's incredibly satisfying. And people are getting back into that because I feel like so much of our life has gone online and so much of our life has gone to, like we talked about, spreadsheets and things you can control. And it's actually fun to work with something outside of that world, outside of computers, actually be out in the sun, turn your phone off, and we work in lawns and gardens as a career, and to work in that career and still want to come home and still keep working, it shows how enjoyable it is.
Yeah, I went to a conference. It was really interesting. It had humans and nature, and he goes, and then he puts the next slide up, and he goes, "No, humans are nature. We're not. We've been marketed to and separated. We're not. We are part of. We are nature. We are it." And there's Professor Michael Sean Fletcher from Melbourne University. He's an Indigenous, I think he's paleoecologist. He talks about the wilderness as being a myth. He says wilderness means no humans, but humans are on Earth. Like humans are part of every system. We're allowed to be because that's what we are. It's just about how you are in that environment, rather than being that someone who sees a tree as a dollar value, like as only having it cut down. You see it, like we were talking before with that development, you're seeing that tree for its intrinsic value, for the shade, for the beauty. It looks amazing. You haven't gone, oh, well, if I cut this tree down, I can put another house there and make $1 million from it. You've seen that you can't put a monetary value on it. So, yeah, it's really interesting. I found that change that humans are nature. It just it blew my mind. I was just like, of course we are. Jesus Christ. We're allowed to dig. We're allowed to prune plants because we are one of it.
That's what we used to do. That was all we used to do for a period of time, as human beings. And then eventually you start making some agriculture and you're still in that world. And then eventually, you get to the technology we have today. But what we do today, we're the weirdos, who sit on a computer, look at a screen. It's what we do now is strange. And people who spend all their time gardening and doing that as their hobby, they're actually the people who are much more like, our ancestors back in the day. So I feel like that's part of the calling. It's part of the interest. Yeah, and not to start this whole rabbit trail as well. I feel like some of the very sort of over the top preachy environmentalists who maybe we agree with them on their philosophies, but maybe the delivery is a little bit strong and a little bit polarizing sometimes. I feel like sometimes they get so worked up about it because it's such a juxtaposition. It's so nice compared to the real world, or the corporate world that we have, and it's so rare. And it's funny, like those people are so in love with it. They're so driven by it. And I consider myself someone who's sort of on that sort of team, just a different sort of philosophy on how to get the message across. But we love it so much, and I feel like it's maybe because we don't spend that much time in it. Because you go out to the country, you go out to the farmers, and they're not that they don't care so much about it because they're around it all the time. Do you know what I mean? Like it's almost like there's a deprivation that when you go out in nature, you're like, oh, this thing's so amazing, it's so awesome, and you go to the farmers, like, yeah, we know this is our life, this is why we're here. Does that make sense to you? I don't know if I've explained that correctly, but yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's because like I do this job, like it's not a job. Like it really isn't. Like it's just like I know all, I can close my eyes and think of all my clients' gardens and everything we do in it. Like it is just the best. It's the best feeling just being in it and just not ever having to really think about anything that I do. Like it's just, and then I come home and it's just, like I'm a bit like I don't know what it is. It's just something that it's just in me, and I absolutely love it. And it's the easiest thing in the world to do. And as I say, like that's why I have my and there was a thing like when you were talking about before about like lawns, and people go, lawns are bad, and so that's why I've got my display lawn, because I love a lawn. I said because the thing is that having a green piece of grass, it shows off the plants around it. Because if you just have plants, then you can't show those plants off. And I read a really interesting book, actually, my wife got me, and it was about the philosophy where lawns sort of come from. And part of the book, I can't remember what it was called, but part of the book talks about forest glades. So, within a forest, you might have an opening and it's grassland. They believe part of our lizard brain is that grass was protection, but it was also where you hunted, because that's where the herbivores came. So it's very much like, because humans are a grass species, everything we do, like if you look at indigenous cultures, so much of us revolves around grass. Woodlands, burning, everything was to promote grass. We eat grass. One of our most major crops that we eat is wheat. It's a bloody grass. Rice, another grass. So,
Barley.
Corn, barley,
Yep.
grass. Like it's all grass. Like we're a fire and grass species. That's what we have. It's just that, obviously we've got tools now that makes mowing and doing lawns and more free time and etc. But I will defend, like you've said before many times, I will defend a well-maintained lawn. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like I said, you can have a matrix with a few weeds in it, stuff like that. That's completely fine. And I'll take that any day over plastic grass, that needs to be watered so you can walk on it because it's too hot in summer. Like, isn't that the most ridiculous thing ever? And then if you've got pets, then you've got to disinfect it because they're poos and peas.
Yep.
Grass is naturally cleaning, and it's just wild. And then the thing is, it's got to get replaced because plastic turf degrades in the Australian sun. It doesn't look good after a while. It fades. It starts to fall apart. It pulls up at the edges. We better not go here because
we get too heated.
Yeah, anything living is better. Yeah,
100%. I've got one more question for you because you said you're in your 50s. Have
I
you
better
thought?
Because my family bloody come home now and they want to do cooking and they weren't meant to be home
I want to
yet.
live their life. Well, you know what? I'll ask you one more question, which answer it quickly. I have a feeling that you think about retirement, but I also have a feeling of how you're going to do retirement, and I'm not sure. Could you actually retire? Do you think you're the actual person who could actually stop one day, or do you love it so much you'll stay doing as much as you can till the day you die?
You might have heard my wife laughing in the background. We've actually talked about this, and she said, I will never retire. All I will do is reduce my hours.
Right, yeah.
So that's what she said, so I do a 9-day fortnight now. Like I could work 7 days a week, but I choose not to. So basically I'll try and do an 8-day fortnight and then and just keep going. Like if I don't have to stop, I won't. So basically I will keep going as long as I possibly can and just reduce my hours as my body allows me. But I've changed so much. Well, I don't do mulching anymore. I don't do any paving or any of that hard stuff. What I do isn't physically difficult. Like it's not like I can hedge all day. Like it's not, it's not hard. Like holding a, I mean, steel hedges aren't that great. They're reasonably heavy. I use all battery stuff now, so they don't vibrate that much. I can do it all day, but I'll swap up my jobs anyway. So physically, I'm great. Never hurt myself gardening ever. Mountain biking, well, that's a whole different story. I've hurt myself so many times mountain biking, but gardening, no, back's good, hands good, everything's great. So no, I'll just keep going as long as I can.
Well, on that note, we should stop, keep going. You can keep going in the gardens. We'll stop the podcast. Thanks you so much, Attila, for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me, Luke. It's been a blast.
It was. And enjoy your dinner. And everybody else, we'll see you in the next podcast.
Will do. Thanks, buddy.